So first, let's walk through a little bit of the creative process that I go through when I'm determining visual effects like this. And so say I was seeing this shot for the first time and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do and put inside of the shot. First thing I always like to do is see where my eye is naturally drawn in the shot. And so if I go ahead and play the footage, just take note of wherever your eye looks at from the start. And so for me specifically, what I notice is this little section right here. And that is for a variety of reasons. The first one is that we have these kind of lakes right here. So we have natural kind of lines leading to that. So we have a line right here, we have a line right here, and then we have a line over here. All of these lines are directly meeting at this point right here. So our eye are naturally going to be drawn to that section over here. The other thing, and the reason that I like this point so much, is because of the rule of thirds. And so the rule of thirds, if we can enable that in Blender. So if we come up to the camera, we can go down to viewport display. And then right here in the composition guides, we have this third section. So it might be a little bit hard to see, but basically now there are lines in the frame that basically position it on thirds of the camera. Break up the camera view into 3 different sections, both horizontally and vertically. Basically, all the rule of thirds means is that at the areas where those lines meet, such as like here, down here, and then here. Those points are going to be where the viewer naturally looks in a shot, no matter which shot you're actually showing. And so in filmmaking and stuff like that, you always want to take the rule of thirds into account. And so, of course, this line up here is directly in the cross section between the up and down line and that line. And so let's just take a mental note that this area up here is a very noticeable spot, and where 90% of the people actually watching are going to view this shot and look there first. And so knowing that now, we basically want to, whatever we do inside of visual effects or anything, we want to draw that viewer to that spot. And so we'll use like this spot up here. We have a nice bird that kind of comes into frame here and flies like that. And so that's going to lead our eyes a little bit more up here. So that automatically helps, from the start. What we will notice is we have a lot of like dead space down here that honestly the viewer really isn't going to be looking at too much. So what I want to do is I want to use some of this dead space to actually draw the attention to this area up here. So for this visual effects, I wanted to think about something that would draw the eye up there. And so in thinking about that, I thought this would be a perfect shot for a ship to be like coming into frame and then going out to a base out here. And so that was my first kind of instinct was, maybe we'll have a ship on frame 1 start kind of out here. And then, around like frame 40 or something, a ship would like come out here, basically just like traveling like that and entering frame. And then towards the end, it'll move out here and actually kind of go towards the base and stuff like that. That's over here. And so basically we'll start the ship. It'll kind of tilt like that and then come out here. And then finally our eye will be settled up here. And now we don't really care about all this section down here. And so that's really nice. And actually this shot is perfect for that because another consideration I always do is where, the luminance values, the high luminance values. And so we have a huge highlight up here and then a lot of like, evenly lit space up here. However, down here, it's very kind of dark, luminance values and all that stuff. And so that's also going to help us move the eye up here. And so again, those are just all the things that go into my consideration for a shot like that. Now that we know some of our goals and where we actually want to lead our audience, let's go ahead and import some of the objects that we're going to be using. So the first one, if we just type in planet and hit that up here, we have this first one, which is this planet dying asset. We can actually right click and see some of more of the information about it. So thank you to this author right here. This is the author of the model, but you can see the resolution, the face count, all of that stuff. And so we have that. Let's go ahead and click and drag that into our scene. So now we have this asset right here, and very important, whenever we're importing assets, you always want to make sure our scene collection is the one that's highlighted up here, because if we have another collection that it's being installed into, whatever asset we drag into there, it'll actually be added to that collection. So again, we just want to make sure our scene collection is kind of enabled up here. The next one, let's add our frigate. So if we just type in frigate, we should see this first one up here. I believe this is like a Star Wars ship or something. So I'm just going to drag and drop that into here as well. Also, you want to make sure that you save often, because I find with this add-on, it crashes a little bit more when you're actually importing in the add-ons, because there's so much data going into that. So the next one, we can do the G1 spaceship. So if you type in that, we have this first one. So this is an amazing model again. So thank you to this creator. We can go ahead and import that in. And then finally, the final one that we want to do, if we type in drone 2 up here, we have, where is it? If we go here, the sci-fi drone 2, this is what we're basically going to be using as our building. So let's drag and drop that in here as well. So now that we have all of our objects in, I want to talk a little bit about how to optimize our scene. So the biggest kind of two things to worry about are the amount of polygons and geometry data in our scene, and then also the amount of textures that we have in our scene. And so both of those things are going to heavily influence how fast it actually takes to render out our final render. So one thing I like to change is, let's come up here and go to the statistics. And now at the top left, we have all this extra information that we can tell about our scene, such as the face count, the amount of objects, all of that stuff in our scene. And so we're going to constantly be kind of checking this kind of area up here to be making sure that we are optimizing it as much as possible. Okay, so now with all of our objects in, let's go ahead and switch our render engine. So instead of Eevee, let's go to Cycles and then GPU Compute if you have one. Let's go ahead and denoise our viewport, but not our render. And then I'm just going to copy and paste our samples to the render. Again, these are all the settings I like to use when I'm in the creative process. At the very end, this is where we can come and up the sample count again and the denoise and all that stuff. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and position some of these things. First of all, let's go to Film Transparent, just so we can see some of that. So first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and deal with adding a ground plane. So I'm going to Shift A, I'm going to add a mesh plane, and then let's just est and scale that all the way up until we're getting some of the area out here, and just making sure we're getting all of that area. So now that is going to basically help us with our reference to where our ground is. What I might do is, real quick, I'll add visibility and make this a shadow catcher just so we can see our ground footage again, but the object is still there in the 3D space. So let's come over here. I'm going to make a new window, and then I'll come to the top view up here just so I can position these around a little bit better. So first, let's do the planet. So I'm going to come up here and enable that collection. And with the planet dying, we can go ahead and position that all the way in the back. So I'm going to G and then Y, just move that super far back in the background. So like that. And then we can GX, move that there, and then GZ, move that up. And then just hit S to scale that all the way up just so we can see it. And again, we do want it super far away from our camera because that's where the actual planet would be in real life. And so it's actually not going to give us a lot of parallax data. And so we can, view it how we would actually view it from the planet surface like that. Okay, so that is the planet done. Let's go ahead and do our drone. So Sci-Fi Drone 2, just going to select that. And so this is basically going to be our building that we're going to have in our scene. And so with the drone selected, there's this empty at the bottom. This is where we're going to be controlling it from. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and hit S to scale that up. And I'm going to use this as a building. So let's go ahead and GZ move that down just so it's something like that. And then I want it kind of in the background here. So I'm going to G Shift Z, move that all the way kind of back here like that, somewhere around like there, I think. And then I might also scale that up a little bit. Something like that, and then Z move that down. Just so we have this building kind of in the background there. And then, of course, now that we have that there, we can go ahead and deal with our spaceship. So our frigate, we can go ahead and place that there as well. So I'm just going to scale that down and place that kind of in the background there. And then going to move that around to where I want it. So somewhere like right there where it's like right above our kind of factory. And just go ahead and move that up a little bit more and maybe position it like that. So you can get real creative and position it wherever you want. Of course, everything is black because we haven't actually added the lighting in, so don't worry about that for now. Okay, so finally for the ship, let's go ahead and do some animating there. So I'm just going to scale this down, to how I want it. So that's, somewhere around here is pretty much the size I want it. Of course, I do want it to start kind of over here. So let's GX, move that like over there, and then rotate it somewhere like that. Let's hit I. I only want to do the location keyframes first. So let's go ahead and do the location and nail that down as much as I can. So now I have that there. Let's go ahead and go to like frame 80, and I can move that on the X and then the Y, move it forward a little bit, and then we'll move on the Z a little bit just so it goes up, ever so slightly. So then we'll hit I and location again here. And at the very end of my clip, I'll also set another location keyframe. We'll G Shift Z, move that over here to where, it's going to the ship area over here. So we'll hit I, location right there. So now we can play this, and we can now see our ship is basically moving, towards the camera, and then it darts over there. And so it's a little bit wonky right now. So what I'm going to do is let's come bring this window out over here. And I do want to make sure our curve, you can see now it's basically curving where it's going like this, and then it's like doing a dart like that. I want to make it more so it's like curved like that. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add another kind of keyframe here. So we'll make sure it's X over here. I'm just going to move it a little bit ever so slightly and add a location keyframe there. So that way it'll kind of smooth out that curve. Yeah, so that looks much better. And so again, those are just kind of 4 location keyframes there. It does kind of speed up for some reason here. So I might come to this keyframe here and GY, move it back a little bit. Kind of finicky, I know, and I'm not the best animator, and so take my animation with a grain of salt. So now we can see that we're having that result, and that looks much better, and giving us more what we want. I might move this over just a tad so it's more in frame. Again, rule of thirds, all of that jazz over there. And so this is the result I'm getting now, where it's basically just coming, doing a loop, and then going towards the ship. So of course now we have to deal with the rotation. So this is where this top view comes in real nice. And so now I'll basically, I'm going to take the point A. So point A is right here, right? And then we'll go to B is right here. And so we basically need to rotate that ship so it's following that line. So let's go ahead and do that. So this ship, I need to rotate right here. I need to rotate it like that. So I believe with that, if we do a rotation keyframe this time, that is matching much more of the trajectory of the ship. So now let's go to this frame. So this frame, the ship would be curving and stuff. And so if you think about the physics of an actual ship, it needs to be basically tilted to make that curve. So first of all, let's rotate it on the Z, just right here. Set a rotation keyframe. And of course, I want to go ahead and R, and we can go ahead and double tap Y, and that'll actually make it, roll like this along its own kind of axis like that. So I basically want it to, rotate like that. So let's I rotation, and now let's play that. So now we actually see it's, doing a little bit of spin. So let's undo my rotation I did, and let's redo it. So R, double tap Y, and make sure I don't go around in a circle. So like that. And now if I hit I rotation and play the animation, it should, be spinning like that. So that looks pretty good. Of course, we do have to set it to the other kind of things as well. And so I'll make sure this is going the correct way. So I rotation like that. So now it goes and kind of follows. It's going forward at all time, like a spaceship would. And so now you can see it kind of, makes its turn, and then goes like that. And then we'll go ahead and by this frame, it shouldn't be tilting like that. So we'll go ahead and R, double tap Y, and make sure it's going back like that. And it's also should be going more towards like that. So I rotation. The nice thing here is that we've now created a new keyframe separate from the location. So now we can, influence that a little bit more and get it more like a spaceship look. So now you can see it's basically going like that and then turning like that. I'm actually going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and R, double tap Y, and it should be kind of rotated like that for now. Again, this is always just kind of like playing around with all the motion and everything. I will notice we kind of speed up a little bit in between these. So I'm going to move that 80 frame to like a 60 something frame. That's actually way too much. We need to do it to like there maybe. Yeah, so that's looking better. I could, spend all day to kind of, animate that ship. But hopefully you guys get a, result that you like. What we do have to make sure is that it's not going to be touching the floor. So I'm actually going to come to this section over here. And I just want to make sure it's not touching the floor, which it's not. So that is looking good right there. So that is the animation of my ship. So hopefully you guys can play around with that. Again, it's all about just, selecting your object, hitting I to set location and rotation keyframes. And, making sure you get the result that you like there. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and join these areas. And I want to go ahead and talk about getting some lighting in our scene. So this is where we're going to introduce a new concept. It's a HUI image. And so this is where we can go ahead and use a image to actually influence the lighting of our scene instead of making lighting in a 3D space. So what I'm going to do is I've provided a link to an HDRI that we can use down below. And so we need to go ahead and import that into our scene. So in order to actually influence the world lighting of our scene, we can go ahead and go to the world properties. I'm going to select this yellow dot right here, and we can set it to be an environment texture. So environment textures is going to influence the reflection and also lighting of our scene compared to the default color that it automatically comes with. So let's go ahead and open up our HDRI. Again, link is down below for that. All it is just a image file. So let's go ahead and open that image file. And now you can see that we actually have some lighting in our scene. Of course, we can't see the actual thing. And so let's come back out to the film transparent. And now you can see what this HDRI is. It's basically just a 3D kind of image that it's being projected on the world. And it has lighting and reflection data baked into it. And so this is what it's giving us. Of course, our sun is going the exact wrong way. If we go back into see our footage, our sun is coming from this way. And so we basically need to recreate our HDRI to be positioned at that exact location. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to drag a new window out here. Let's go to the shader editor. And then inside of here, we have, instead of object, I'm going to select world up here. And so with world selected, now you can see exactly what our HDRI is doing. It's basically an image node right here being plugged into our background, which is being fed into our world output, which is basically just the texture of our background, if you want to think of it like that. So now we need to basically rotate it around so that the sun position is the exact same position of our 3D environment. So let's go ahead and do that. If you have the Node Wrangler add-on installed, so Edit Preferences Add-on, you should have it enabled by default. I believe we talked about it in Chapter 1. But Node Wrangler is just an amazing add-on, quality of life features, stat like that. So make sure that's enabled. Let's click this node right here. We can hold Control and T, and that'll add a texture coordinate and mapping node. And then all we need to do is play around with the Z rotation until we match the sun direction. So the sun is like up here. And I might also increase the Y just because I believe in the actual footage, our sun is like roughly around this area right here. So now these are my numbers if you want to use those as well. But just match it to your own scene. Let's go ahead and turn transparent back on. And now you can see that matches much more closely to our footage and is giving us much better lighting than it did before. So that is what I'm going to leave it as. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go ahead and get out a first render. So I'm going to come to solid view here, and then we can render the image. Okay, so here you can see we have this rendered image. Let's come back out to the compositing tab just so we can see this. So we basically have everything in this foreground view layer right now. We have all of our objects, our planet, building, ship, and then this foreground ship and all that stuff. And so that's totally fine if you do want to, have it all as one. However, I like breaking them up into their own specific kind of objects so we can differently affect them in compositing. And so one thing I do want to point to right now is that our color is off. And so if you remember when we were working in the motion tracking and all that stuff, we had set the color view transform to be standard instead of AGX. And so this is where we have to come back out and talk about the fun color aspect of Blender. And so let's come down. I want to go to color management, and you'll see it's set to standard. Let's set it to AGX now. And now you'll see that our renders are much better looking and it's much more accurate to our thing. What I actually might do to push the lighting a little bit more is let's come back into the world tab. I'm going to set the strength up. We'll do like a 1.5 or something just to match it a little bit better. But now you can see that we're basically having some accurate lighting on our CGI. But now our kind of background thing is looking much more, underexposed and a lot more dull looking. And so that is where we have to again break it out into different kind of Blender projects. One where we're actually rendering out all of our CGI passes with the AGX transform. And so again, that's this project is what we're going to be rendering with AGX. And then we need another project where we're going to be doing all the compositing inside of standard. And so that is kind of what we're working towards now. And so let's go ahead and break out all of these objects into their own kind of passes and stuff so we can render those out for compositing. So first thing I want to do is let's go to the compositing tab. We want 4 of these render layers node, 1 for each of the objects. So let's go ahead. I'm going to Shift D, just duplicate those down all like that. So of course, since we duplicated them, all of them are the foreground kind of thing right here, and we don't have any other thing that we can select it from. So let's go ahead and let's go back out of the layout tab. We want to break out different view layers for each specific object. So what we can do is with this foreground, let's name this, we'll just name the ship for now. And then we can go ahead and click up here, add new layer. And so for this layer, we'll do the planet, and then we'll add a new one. And you can, of course, name these whatever you want. I'm just naming them kind of to my default conventions. I'll name this one factory for this little building right here. And And then we'll do one final one is going to be our big ship. So I know very scientific naming conventions here. So now that we have all of our different view layers, of course, we need to change all of our collections to kind of match that. So with big ship, of course, I want all of our other objects besides the ship actually in view. And so this is the only thing that we're going to be viewing in this view layer right here. And so next, let's go into the factory. And so factory, of course, we only want that kind of factory object collection. So let's go and change all of these collections off just so we have our factory right here. So of course, let's do it for our planet, everything besides our planet collection. And then finally for our ship, let's go ahead and do it everything besides our ship collection right here. So now all of them are broken up and, into their own kind of view layers and stuff like that. Let's go out to compositing. Of course, let's change these. So first one is ship. Let's do planet. This one will be factory, and then this one will be big ship. So now that we have all of that, let's go ahead and render this image now. Okay, so once that has finished, let's come back out here. And now in the compositing tab, if we shift control click all of these, we can view each of the different ones. So this is our planet pass. This is our factory pass. This is our big ship pass, and then our, of course, our regular ship pass. One thing to note is that within all of these passes, I could also break it down further into like a shadow pass, but I'm not going to worry about that since that gets a little bit too complicated for what I want to achieve with this course. So now you can see all of them have their shadow baked into it and all of those objects right now. Now you will see if I come back out to my view render, my render took a very long time. And so that is where we want to go ahead and start optimizing our scenes to actually go ahead and get faster render times. So the biggest optimization that I'm going to do is for this planet pass right here. So this planet is basically right now is a full 3D object. So if I go to the planet view layer, it's a full 3D object. However, up here, it doesn't move as much and we can't tell the parallax and all that stuff. So we actually don't need A, all of those polygons up there, but B, we also don't need all of the texture data. Now, I believe these are like 4K textures and there's I think 4 of them or something like that. And so all of those 4K textures are going to add to your render time. And so this is a great place where we can actually optimize our render to A, look the exact same, but B, render out 10 times as fast. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and I want to render this out as basically a image. And so to do that, let's go ahead. I'm going to create a new collection. I'm just going to name this cameras because I'm going to create a new camera. So I'm going to plug the empty into this and then also my camera into this. So now we have our empty, which is again parented to actually set the scale of our scene. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new camera. So let's Shift A, create new camera down here. And then with this camera selected, of course, we still are viewing from our default camera. But in order to view from another camera, all we have to do is select this green little icon right here. And now we're viewing it from that specific camera. So what I want to go ahead and do is I want to position this camera to be viewing the planet up here. So again, if you remember in my the first chapter, what we can do is first let's set the clip because now that we have a new camera, we don't have that same clip that we selected before. So I'm just going to increase that just so we can see the planet in our background. Next, if you go to View and then Navigation and then down to Walk Navigation, we basically just want to kind of zoom all the way to our planet over here. So I'm just using the scroll wheel to increase the speed of my camera, by the way. And so now we basically just want our camera in view like that. So that is looking good. And let's go to rendered view just to make sure that is all, accurate. So now we basically have this as our same view as our other camera. So let's go ahead and select that other camera down here. So now you can see our, planet is in the background. The idea here is that we want to render out a image like this and then basically project the image in the 3D space instead of the 3D object. So then it's saving us on both the polygon count, but also the resolution. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is let's come and I'm going to click here. We're going to go to the view layer properties and I'm going to render a single layer just so we're rendering the planet view layer only and not the other one. So we're saving a little bit of time there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to render image like that. Okay, so once that is done, you might see it like this, and that's because we didn't plug into the composite node. That's super simple. All we have to do is just come back out here and select planet. So now we have this planet preview, and so what we're going to do is we're going to save this image now. So let's come to image and then save as, and of course you can save this wherever you want, and then I just have one right here, so of course let's just name this V2. So now we have this. Of course, we do want an alpha channel, and since it's PNG, the compression ratio doesn't really matter. It won't affect the quality. So let's actually turn this up to 100 since it's just one single image. So we can go ahead and save image as, and that'll take a little bit to load. It's compressing the PNG. Again, since it's lossless, it's not going to affect the extra quality. So now that we have that, what we can do is we can go ahead and go back to our default camera. And then we do want to make sure we have a add-on that comes default with Blender enabled. So if we go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, we can type in the Images as Planes add-on. So you just want to make sure that this is checked again. And then what that allows us to do is now if we hit F3, that'll open up our search menu. And so then we can search for different things. Of course, mine is at the top. But if you just want to type in planes, we have Images as Planes. So we can import that in. Let's just locate the asset that we just made. So this Planet V2 PNG. And we're going to import that in. So now, with that add-on, we basically have this now basically 2D plane inside of Blender, and so that is looking very good. Of course, it automatically set up the texture. However, the texture is a little bit off because it's basically being influenced by our world shading. If I turn this down, you can see now it's black. Of course, we don't want that. We want it to be kind of 100% lit all the time. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to bring this window out here. This is just our shading workspace again. We're on the World tab, so we need to switch to Object. And now you can see with the Import Images as Planes add-on, it automatically set up this. And so again, the principal BSDF is going to be affected by the world shading, and so we don't want that. We can go ahead and delete that. And then if we plug our color directly into the surface, we have this result. Of course, we don't have our alpha, and so in order to actually go ahead and get that back, I'm going to Shift-A, add a Mix Shader, and we're going to plug that in there. And then we're going to go ahead and add a Transparent BSDF. So now with that, if we go ahead and plug that BSDF into the bottom socket, and then use the alpha as our factor, we should have this. It's actually the wrong result, so we need to go ahead and flip our inputs. So now we actually have the transparent on top and our footage on the bottom. And now, since we have that, no matter if we come over here and play around with the world's kind of lighting and stuff like that, no matter what we do, it's always going to be shaded over here. So that looks good. Let's reset our kind of value over there. And so of course over here we have this new object. It's not in any collection or anything over here. So I'm actually going to add a new collection. We'll name this planet underscore 2D, and then we'll place it below our planet collection up here, and of course place that object inside of there. Now what we can do is first let's position our object. So I'm going to come up to the 3D viewport, come to the top view. I'm just gonna move our plane all the way into the back just so it's in front of our kind of plane, our planet up there. Then let's S to scale that up again. We basically just want to try to get it the same size as our other planet is there. So that is looking good now. And so now I can go ahead and turn off this 3D planet section up here. And now what that has allowed us to do with all of that set up is now if I re-enable it, you can take a look at the faces and all of these statistics over here. You can see it's some 4,000 number up here. And now if I disable it, it's gone all the way down to 2. And so that's just an amazing way to kind of get the same result. Again, that it only worked for our planet thing because our planet is only being like 2D tracked up here almost. So if we did it for the ship icon and everything, it wouldn't work as well because the ship actually needs some parallax data and all that stuff. So again, just a nice kind of optimization thing. The other nice thing that it allows us to do is now we don't have to render out those 4K textures every single frame. And so it's going to save us a ton of time for actually rendering without affecting the quality of our, kind of final render. So that is, one of the optimizations. We can go a little bit more further and, decrease the texture sizes of some of the stuff in the background and all this stuff. But I'm just going to leave it as that since that'll help us, speed up some of the render times. And just an introduction into how you can actually optimize a scene with your 3D viewport. So let's go ahead. I'm going to come back here and make sure render single layer is unchecked. And now let's actually go ahead and render out all of our passes. So I'm going to go to solid view. We can go up to the compositing tab. Of course, we do have all of these, passes again. We can actually go ahead and render these out. This is where we need to go inside of another Blender project to actually go ahead and composite everything. So I'm not going to be doing any compositing in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the movie clip and alpha over. Now let's go ahead and render everything out. Now I want to render all these stuff out at the same exact time, so I can render this overnight if I need to. So let's go ahead. I'm going to Shift-A. I'm going to add a file output node. And so the file output node is just going to allow us to render multiple things at once. And so if we come up here to the node and then properties down here, we can go ahead and add some inputs. Of course, we do want 4 since we're going to be rendering out 4 separate passes. So let's go ahead and name them. I'm going to name them ship And then at the very end of everything, I'm going to put a underscore, because what's going to happen when we render this out is it's basically going to be a image sequence. And then after that underscore, it's going to put the frame number. And so we want to separate the text from the actual frame number. So once we have that, we can, let's do the next one. We'll name this one planet underscore. This one we'll name factory underscore. And this final one we'll name big ship underscore. So now we have them all kind of separated. Of course, let's plug the images into the correct socket. So right there, there, and then factory into the factory, and then big ship into the big ship. So of course, you do want to come out here, and we'll set a new folder location where we want this to be rendered as. So I'm just going to name this folder V2, since I already rendered it out before. The nice thing is we actually don't have to name anything here, because if we hit accept, everything, it's going to be named as these things down here. So this is where we actually want to put our file names right there. Of course, I'm going to be rendering as a PNG with alpha compression. I'm just going to keep on 15% just so we can render this out pretty efficiently. And so now with all of that, let's go ahead and render out an image just so we can see and make sure everything is rendering out okay. I'll actually notice that we're having an issue real quick with our ship collection. Let's go back out to each of the different collections. So if I go to ship, because we added a new collection, our planet 2D up here, it automatically made it for all of the view layers. So we need to go ahead and disable that for all of our other ones. So planet is correct. Let's go to factory, turn the planet 2D collection off there, and our big ship, we also want to turn that off there. So now we can go ahead and come and render the image. Okay, so once you have gotten this black screen, it is done rendering. And here is the folder where we saved it into. Now you can see we basically have 4 separate images. And if I click inside of them, you can see we have the ship, we have our factory, we have the planet, and then our ship. And so that is just a very nice way to kind of break them up into different kind of render passes and stuff like that. Now we are actually ready to render out our animation. And so let's go ahead and come back out here. Now this is where we want to do our high quality settings that we had set earlier. So let's come back out here. This is where you can maybe increase the sample count if you want. You can even denoise the final result if you want. So I believe these are the settings I used to actually render this out, and this took a little bit of time to actually render since it's 200 frames long. And so maybe just set this up to render overnight, and then by the end of it, you should have a folder that basically looks like this, where you have all of your renders kind of in the same folder. Of course, you can go ahead and break them down into their individual folders and stuff like that, but it's not really necessary for this next step. So now we are done with the CGI, and we are actually ready to go ahead and composite everything.